All right, friends. I have the great Martee Hibbs on the line with me tonight. It's been a while since we've connected, and we just connected on visually on the Zoom just a few minutes ago, and we both just started unloading. I think we're having a day at the minimum and talking about some of the things going on. So we're going to vent a little bit, I think, on this podcast. Martee, it's so good to see you. How are you, buddy?
You know what? I miss you guys, or at least you on the session. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed doing the session with the guys, and good to see you, Dennis. It's been a while, and I know the
yeah,
last time I wasn't available, but I see you're keeping busy. There's lots to talk about, of course, and
yeah.
I was just talking to my wife, had a coffee, and I said, "I got a show to do," and she knows you from the session. She goes, "What are you
Mhm.
talking about?" I said, "Don't have a clue. We'll figure it out when we get there." Just the
That's
way
how
it
it
works.
always goes. Yeah,
That's how it goes.
we like to keep it, raw and authentic, I think. So I'll have a loose plan, but right now, really, I've got one talking point that I wanted to bring up, but then you already said something big that could take us who knows how long to
Hmm.
go through and explore. So we'll see. It's great. It's great chemistry between us. I'm always thankful when you're on the show.
We
I
enjoy
think
it.
you froze on me. Yeah, you froze on me. So I think
Yeah.
the
What's going on here? That's twice today this has happened. I don't know if it's obviously my connection.
I don't know. I think it's the universe right now. I think
Yeah,
something's staring.
probably. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
doubt it.
I felt it, man. The last, like today, just working in a school, it was, I was telling Martee a minute ago, I'm I'm the security guy and I'm the dean and I'm crisis management. And just the energy at my school today, I literally didn't sit down. I went from one issue to the next. Like I don't usually have days that are this intense. It was just one thing after another all day. Everything's okay, everybody's safe, but it was just the energy, man. Just so much need today. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. You know what? I don't think I've spoken to anybody that doesn't feel something. You just can't
Yeah.
help it. It's just there. It's thick. You can cut it with a knife, like and everything, right? And you don't have to be a genius
Yeah.
anymore. I watch these guys on YouTube. Oh, this is going to happen. We're going to have this, and go take a guess, because there's so much going on. Uh,
Yeah.
you'll be right. There is something big coming, and of course, there is every day something happening, right? And you just got to wonder when
Yeah.
it's going to turn around. It's crazy.
It's not a hard prediction to make, to say
No,
something big's going to happen.
no.
But with that being said, I got to say I have been lucky. I have felt been doing a pretty good job of sheltering myself from it until recently.
Hmm.
I moved recently, so I've got a new house. I've got some land. I've disconnected from the media, and it's been great. But
Yeah, it
I can
is.
feel when I tap in energetically, I feel a heaviness right now. More like a chaotic energy, I think it feels like.
Yeah, I think it's uncertainty, Dennis. It's like
Yeah.
say about the media. I really truly don't follow. As a matter of fact, because as
Yeah.
I told you about the new website, that's keeping me on my toes. We're having just lots of fun
Yeah.
with that. I haven't even looked at anything in the past few days, but you know what?
Mm-mm.
I did look at the charts. I do, and I go, oh,
Yeah.
lots of stuff going on. You can tell by the charts. There's shit happening.
Right. Right. Yeah, you can see. I know
Oh
you were
yeah,
great at reading that and correlating it to like really what's going on in society and the
yeah.
world. It's very telling.
Yeah, we're seeing
Yeah.
volatility like every day, almost every day for the past week or two. New highs in the Dow,
Hmm.
new highs in the S&P. Not new highs, but new advances in gold, new advances in silver. Like every day, you're going, oh, well, this is really getting crazy, and the charts are
Yeah.
just so out of whack. I mean, they're just like on fire. So
What does that tell you, Martee? What's that an indicator of?
nervousness, anxiety, and
Mm,
anticipation of something. I wouldn't say not nice, but something uncertainty, because usually what happens, Dennis, I find this for the 35, 40 years in the markets, when there's uncertainty, people get fearful and they do
yeah.
things, strange things, and they also show up in the markets because most people, I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people look at technical analysis as woo woo or something that's
Hmm.
really like bullshit for a better word.
Right.
But here's the thing, a chart is basically just emotions. So if you say, for
Yeah.
example, as an individual let's say you have a 401k and you had a year or so before you decided to retire,
Hmm.
and you got information that possibly your company is going to go under or that your hedge fund was in trouble. Like, what's your big concern? What's your big concern that if your retirement plan
I'm
may
gonna
go
lose it.
away or
Right.
exactly? So that's
Yeah.
fear. And what happens is when fear manifests itself like that, people do things like, for example, there are people that I know that are in Bitcoin and they want to do well with it. And they've probably done well. But let's say somebody has what they consider a fair bit of money. Maybe they got $50,000 in Bitcoin.
Hmm.
And that's a lot of money for a lot of people. Well,
Right.
if it starts to turn around and things go ugly where the guy says, okay, I might lose my job, suddenly that $50,000 is no longer
Yeah.
able to speculate on the price of Bitcoin. It's got to do more with
Right.
my damn rent and paying my food for
Hmm.
the next few months. So
Yeah.
that gets fear kicks in. My wife and the wife says, "Okay, wait a minute. Let's take this out of this." And
Right.
then if he doesn't, and the markets start to drop, generally what happens is people start to sell and then it feeds on itself. And the more it sells, the farther the markets drop, then the more people that get fearful, which means they start selling. And at this
Right.
point, the guy that has his Bitcoin goes, yeah, let's get out because he's afraid of what he's saying and he doesn't want to lose his
Right.
50 grand, whether that's in
Right.
for the stock market or whatever. So it perpetuates a fall that gets out of control because it feeds on itself. And that shows up in charts as a
Hmm.
massive big break to the downside. And then you have the guys that manage these funds. And a lot of people think these fund managers actually manage the funds. Well, let me tell you, that's bullshit too. Okay.
Hmm.
Because if you're a fund manager and you got a fund that has maybe 200, 300, 500 stocks in it, do you think for a minute they go through and look at each individual stock and
Hmm.
determine whether or not it's liquid, if it's competitive, if there's something
Right.
going on with the board of directors, if no, none of that even
Right.
matters. That's called passive investing. So what they do is they take these funds or these stocks, they throw them in a basket, just like the
Hmm.
CDOs back in '08,
Right.
and you got two or three maybe good stocks in there and 10 or 15 crap stocks. And what happens is when the fund gets a signal on the chart, just like I do, they go, okay, this is not good. Now, something as simple. Everybody that ever traded stocks, I don't like it, but they talk about the death cross. Well, that's where the 50 crosses over the 200-day moving average. It's antiquated, it's antique. I don't know what anybody would use it for, but there are people that would use it. When that
Hmm.
50-day moving average crosses over the 200, it's called a death cross. It's like sell. People will sell on that. And of course, that
Yeah.
perpetuates more selling. So the
Right.
idea is that it's all emotion, and emotions are captured on the charts.
That's fascinating. And note that what I'm thinking of the whole time is that looking at these charts, I think it feels like it's another graphic representation of like the human collective consciousness or the central nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Mm-hmm.
with the way you're explaining
Mm-hmm.
it, and it reminds me of the studies, and I talk about this all the time, coming out of the Heart Math Institute, talking about social coherence
Yeah.
and the electromagnetic wave that comes out of the heart, and the way that basically emotion is transmissible on these electromagnetic fields, right? So if you and I are sitting in a room and we get into a state of coherence, which means we regulate our breath
Yeah.
and we
Right.
put ourselves in a particular emotional state, that's what's the word, contagious. Other people's heart rhythms in our vicinity will fall in. Same
Yeah.
thing when, and we see this with the election years. You mentioned certain names and everybody falls into a certain rhythm, right? I mean, I
Yes.
think this is where
Exactly.
some
Right.
magical practices come
Yeah.
into play.
Exactly.
I think we're seeing the same thing with that fear. It's a signal, it's a frequency that, I
Frequency.
think
That's key. Yeah.
we have to
Frequency.
be
Yeah.
mindful, right? And as
Yeah.
we
You do.
see this, like I'm in that state right now because my day was just nonstop on my central nervous system crisis response, like call after call after
Mm-hmm.
call. And
Mm-hmm.
as we're sitting here, I'm reflecting on that and I'm saying, okay, now I'm talking to a lot of people. And what's going through my mind is I need to dial back my emotion because I'm in a state of reaction and I want to put myself in a calmer state. So I'm projecting something calmer, something that's
Yes.
not going to panic people while they're watching it. Because I started this show in like a
Yeah.
state because I literally went from one thing to the other, came home, like just set up my computer and then sat down and like, here we go. So I'm still coming off of that. But I think when we're mindful of that, looking at things like the market, you could make a different investment, right? You make a different choice when you step
Yes.
out of that
You got to
energy,
step
if
out
you
of
want
it.
to tie the
Exactly.
spiritual aspect. Yeah.
And I like even with what I do is that's why, to be honest with you, as most people probably know this, like I'm not really a trader
Yeah.
because I fancy my program, not myself, but my program that I got as being
Hmm.
better than average. But the
Yeah.
minute I try and start to trade, Dennis, I try to outsmart my program.
Right.
because,
Right.
hey,
Right.
I know better than the program. Then what happens? You
Right.
get caught in this loop when it's emotions, and then I start doing
Hmm.
stupid things. And then what's happening is I'm
Right.
not following my program. And more important, anybody that's following along, now I've lost focus of my real
That's it.
purpose, which is to follow the signals, follow the path,
Right. That's it.
let it do. If you're wrong, you're wrong, no emotions. But the
Right.
minute you get those emotions in there, that's when the wheels
That's
come
it.
up. And like I said,
I,
everything in life today has to do with harmony and frequency. And I truly believe
hmm.
that. Totally,
Yes.
totally.
And
Yeah.
the program sounds to me, making sticking with the metaphor, program's intuition. And then your emotions, when they get in, they start clouding your conscious mind as you're making these decisions. You need to focus on that intuition and step out of the
Mhm.
emotional piece of it and just go with it and don't have that emotional investment in your outcome. Remote viewers say that all the time too. I talked with Edward about, why can't we make money in remote viewing? And he says, well,
Yeah.
usually once you get the emotions involved, that's when it starts to get really difficult because you're vested in a different way.
It definitely does, yeah, and that's the human point that comes into it. Now, I've had a
Yeah.
lot of clients over the years, and I don't want to go into any details, but I'm talking about a lot of well-known psychics that traded with
Yeah.
me. And the reason
Hmm.
being is because I had a special license in Canada, which is called, it's basically a discretionary trading account on futures, which is kind of
Right.
uncommon because they're anal. I mean, you're talking about the Futures Association. If you don't have a
Yeah.
recording of every single comment that was made that guy says sell pork bellies or whatever, if the guy got pissy, he would go to them and say, "Hey, this guy told me to buy this and I lost my money." So right
Right.
away,
Right.
SEC says, "Oh, you give the guy back his money, and here's a $20,000 fine for you." So anyway, the
Yeah.
discretion part of it allowed me to be able to take somebody I trusted and say, "Okay, you want 100,000? You want me to do this for you?" A 20-page disclosure.
Hmm.
There's no guarantees here. I'm going to do the best I can. So
Right.
why am I getting onto that? But anyway, my point was, what was my point?
That you've
See
worked
how I
with a lot of
segue?
psychics, and
Oh yeah,
we're
sorry,
talking
the psychics.
intuition versus emotion,
The
working with psychics for
psychic. So what
investments.
happened is we've had a bunch. There's one gentleman, I won't, and I know his name, and it was maybe 30, 35 years ago. He was a
Hmm.
German engineer, and he created things in his dream. And when he came to me and met me, he through another client who was a channeler. And he
Hmm.
showed me, he says, "Marty, I'm going to show you. This is kind of private, but I just want to show you what I do." So he opened his book and he showed me the things that out of his mind while he's asleep, he would wake up at night, have it by his bed, and he
Yeah.
would sketches.
Yeah.
And anyway, what happened was he had all these dreams, and we tried to do something with it, and nothing really became of it because that's what I always found. I don't believe any psychic can really, truly benefit personally from their.
Hmm.
That's just my thoughts because think about it, Dennis. If they could, why would they just not go trade for themselves, buy lottery tickets for
Hmm.
themselves, or anything else?
Right.
But you
Right.
can't just sit and say, "Well, that yeah, you're right, Marty. That's all. It's all bullshit." No, it's not all bullshit either. But the
Right.
point is, I
Right.
think spirit or whatever you want to call it put something there, but our interpretation is why we can benefit from it, and we weren't meant to benefit
Yeah.
from it. Like for example, and I've said many times on the show with Dick when I did the hosting for a lot of their crypto things.
Right.
And I love these guys. I mean, I think they're amazing. But like for example, Dick or Edward or someone will do something and they go, "Oh, here's what I see," and then they interpret it. And I
Hmm.
personally believe that's not a good thing
Hmm.
because what's happening is your audience is a captive audience. And you're not only showing them something, but now you're telling them what it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
Why not just show it to them? Because we all have our own ideas, our own minds. And we can
Right.
say, many times I said, "Oh, that's interesting." Like, for example, Dick saw this big V one time and he says, "It just went away for a while." And he says, "We've passed that stage." And I said, "Dick, I don't think so. I believe there's coming a
Right.
day when Bitcoin is going and crypto is going to go away. And it would probably be an event like a EMP or whatever they call it, or the other thing,
Right.
when the power goes out, the grid goes down, cyber
Right.
attack." And I could
Right. Right. Right.
see at some point crypto literally going away. So that's how
Hmm.
I interpreted that. But he thought it was some little glitch. The market dropped that week or the week after, and you go,
Hmm.
"Okay, that's it." Anyway, my point I was trying to get at here is even though these guys are brilliant, it's really tough to take a specific item and try and benefit yourself from it. You can't. And,
Right.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
of the dozens, and I'd say dozens, maybe at least a dozen very well-known psychics over my 30 years or so, because the reason they came to me is because I had that license to be able to discretionarily trade without them having to keep their eye on the market.
Hmm.
But none of them ever really benefit. Now, this one guy I was telling you about, the engineer, he created this machine and he ended up selling it to one of the major, sorry, three of the major automakers. It had something to do with a magnetic ability to be able to do something with making parts for brake. I don't
Hmm.
know. I don't want to get into detail. And I know the guy's name, and he was honored. He died. And then after he died, they bought it from his wife, the rights to it. And
Right.
I wouldn't say I chuckled, but I thought, yeah, he was right. Like, he could never really benefit, but when he died, his wife,
Mm.
they sold it, and he became, I think it was the man of the year or the engineer of the month or something like that. And I
Right.
know his name, and I had the magazine. I would like to get a copy. But my point going forward is, we have these intuitions, but I think what we do
Mhm.
is make the mistake of trying to interpret them ourselves, because after it's over, you go, oh, that's what it meant. You know what I mean?
I think that, to your point, and what I've seen in working and talking to so many intuitives and remote viewers, I think when your intention behind a project is to make that financial gain,
Mhm.
that's when things get blurry. I
Mhm.
think when a viewer has a blind target, doesn't know what it is, and puts out the data, or like Dick's sitting there and he goes, I think I should buy this. And in that moment, he buys it because he gets the signal.
Yeah.
I think that's very successful. And Dick has had great success with that. Our viewers, when they're reporting the data, our subscribers have had great success in making their choices. Not that we're giving financial advice, but there have
Yes.
been, many people who have
Yeah.
made a lot of money
Yeah.
based on the remote viewer's data. It's when the viewer themselves sets the goal of, I'm going to view this target and I'm going to make an investment on it and I'm going to get rich. I
Yeah.
think that's when it becomes a problem. And Daz, I got to remember what it was, but Daz was doing some research or was involved in a project where they looked at why that happens and they saw some kind of control mechanism in place
Yeah.
so it
Of
doesn't disrupt things. And I mean, think about that. If you had that
course it
actual
could.
ability,
Yeah.
you could
Yeah.
become God. You could really set yourself up so financially well, you could do anything, right?
Exactly.
So
And that was
maybe
my
there is a control mechanism. Yeah.
yeah, and that was my point too. Like with the Oracle, say for example, I've had it for 20 years,
Yeah.
2008. But yet, if I start trading it myself, I'm going to micro trade it, and I'll be looking at every
Right.
move, trying to outsmart the computer. Say, oh, it's going to give us a sell signal, so I'll jump the gun and sell it ahead of time. And of course, it doesn't give us a sell signal; it starts to go the wrong way, and then I lose money on it.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
It's
interesting, but
there's a
the
discipline
energies,
and
it is.
with that ability, there's a responsibility. It seems like there's rules in terms of how we use that, and what we're capable of doing with it. Speaking of predictions, though, I think, if I can make a quick segue, I want to share something that Dick shared with us in a private chat. I mean, he shared it publicly too, but I want to share this with everybody watching as we segue into this for a few reasons. But I want to showcase really what our team does here and then talk about it a little bit. But this was our world events session that was done for September. This NFE 924 means near future events,
Yeah,
September 2024. That's Dick's labeling there. So he did this session sometime in August. It was timestamped prior to September 1st. They recorded it prior to September 1st. And then this just happened. Dick
yeah,
writes, when the IEDs start popping off in America, that's when we've crossed the line. They're handing off because no going back when they go off. He has a sketch here.
yeah.
IEDs, US. This may not be September, he writes, but they are ready to be put in place. Will bring a big crackdown. And then just the other day, we get this here, September 26th. That's today. That was that this morning? I'm having a day, man. I guess that was just this
26.
morning.
That's
This
today.
came through.
That's
Uh,
today's. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So it says two hurt in explosion from intentionally set IED at Santa Monica Courthouse in California. Talk about it. Like, when would you expect an IED to go off in the United States of America? You heard about that stuff in Iraq and
yeah,
Afghanistan,
yeah.
but not here in the US. And those are the kind of specific predictions that our remote viewing team makes. And that, I mean, but that one, it has a bit of an ominous feel on top of everything, wouldn't you
Sure
say?
does. Yeah. Well, what it does is it makes you realize, like, the fear factor kicks in. But again,
Right.
like I said, what they do is brilliant. But for a point of view of trying to benefit from that, then not that you want to
Right.
benefit from that, but to try and capitalize on it, you wouldn't really be able to do it. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Because
And
it,
our viewers' goal, but I think what's great about what we put out here is like they go in and they just say, my goal is to capture what's going to be in the news,
yes,
which can be helpful to everybody that's consuming our
yes,
products
of course
to
it is.
say, okay, I have an understanding of what's, I mean, you were just talking about, I don't know if you want to talk about it on the air, but some preparations that you have in place just in case things go south. But it's from this kind of information that we take it and we just like COVID. I'm
Yeah.
going to stock up on some extra food just in case, things go this way and we get more and more data that points in that direction. And lo and behold, we're prepared
Well, of
for it.
course, that's exactly, I think, our mindset with most people. Like if they realize, like we've been talking now for the past month or two, that we feel like we're getting into war. Why? You can see it. It's not going away. It's escalating by
Mhm.
the day. And we're getting so much talk about it all through social media, even on
Mhm.
mainstream media. So it's over your head. It's there. It's just a matter of when. Because normally,
Yeah.
years ago, it would come to a point and it would turn around, but it was always kind of controlled by the mainstream media. But it's not. We're getting deeper and deeper. Now there's concerns about China and the
Mhm.
Taiwan thing coming up again, and the BRICS nation, pulling away from the U.S. dollar system, the collapsing of the economic system itself. Like there's just so many
Right.
things coming from different angles that people are fearful. So the news that we or the things we put out there might suggest, like for example, my big one is diversification. Like
Mhm.
forget about Bitcoin, forget about gold, forget about silver, forget about everything. Be diversified. Think
Yeah.
outside the box a bit because you need to understand when things get bad, there are certain things that everybody needs. And if you don't have it, you should really consider it like fresh water. If you don't have a water
Mhm.
supply, or cash
Right.
because we know if the system goes down and it's going to, in my opinion, I don't, that's like a
Right.
98% chance. I don't mean go down for good. It might be down for a week or so, but if you don't have electronics, you can't get gasoline
Mhm.
at the gas stations. You don't have debit
Right.
cards. So you should have a little bit of cash on hand. You should have some extra
Yeah.
gasoline if things get bad, especially if you're in a city. So this kind of
Yeah.
information, it helps people because it makes them realize you got to be prepared because I remember a funny story when we were building a cottage when I first got married up north. My wife, she'll kill me if she heard me say this. We were building a cottage, and this was back in, oh my God, 85. And we put the basement in and we put the road in and we're getting ready. And of course, she's a woman. She wants to wash her hair. And we said, well, go down to the
Mhm.
lake. She goes, what do you mean down to the lake? And I said, well, what
Mhm.
else are you going to do? She goes, well, don't you have any water in the cabin? She didn't have
Right.
any idea. And I said, no. She says, well, why don't you go to the store and buy some taps? Sorry, me if she hears me. But the idea, she's very young at the time. She understands as long as
Yeah.
you have taps, you got water. And, that's not quite
Right.
the way it works.
Right.
But the thing is, with what we're saying, is that, yeah, people need to be prepared because these are unsettling times for everybody. And
They
that's why I
are.
enjoy doing the show. Like when I started with working with Dick, as you know, they pulled me in to be part of the team, but I'm not really
Yeah.
officially an employee. So
Mhm.
what I found helpful is that any information that I would share with the people that they could get something from it. That's what I wanted. And it makes me feel good
Right.
because I can take a bit of knowledge that I've got, whether it's in the markets or reading charts or whatever, and help other
Right.
people. Because that's what it's all about, I think, in the end.
Yeah.
I always had one thought, Dennis, that you might agree with or you might not. Unfortunately, I think most human beings we're not organized. At least I'm
Mhm.
not. So we are people in the sense that if we drive along and see some commotion across the street, now you're different because of what you do. But if I'm in my car
Right.
with my wife, my family, and we see a big fight in the middle of the street, we look over and we drive the other way. We want to get out of this. That's not something we
Mhm.
want to get involved with. Whereas the so-called elites or the bad MFers are
Mhm.
organized. So there's the difference because if you thought about the number of people in your state or in your province or in your country, if they all had that one mindset and just woke up tomorrow and said, you know what, this is enough. We're taking back our
Mhm.
country. Could you
Yeah.
imagine if a couple of million people descended on Washington?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Marty. And I think we get into dangerous territory with this talk in this day and age.
Hmm.
I used to have that on my platform was all about, I used to say small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. And I truly believe that, but I think it's getting into dangerous territory when we start talking like that, on the air, on YouTube and stuff. But if, having the ability to organize yourselves. And let's take this back to a smaller scale, right? We're going through hard times. I just saw a former Intel guy before Congress, and he was resigning because he was lost all faith in the FBI, and he's saying all this stuff. And he said, stock up on bullets, stock up on water, and make sure that you have a community wherever you live, even
Yeah.
if it's 3 or 4 neighbors, because when you have these like-minded people and
Yeah.
we're working together to support each other, and I think that's the key. And even if your community is something like the Future Forecasting Group and the community we have, and just sharing information and how to get resources. And I know some of us were even exchanging things through mail during COVID to support one another as well. So
So
having a community to
we don't
support.
have that community. I don't think we do. I could be wrong. We don't have that community at all. I don't believe in Canada because if
Mhm.
you've ever been to Canada, you know what the typical Canadians are like. And they're from, I'm not sure where they're from originally, but their whole mentality has been brought up that way. We've never been a gun country. We don't have that Second Amendment rights. Right
Right.
now, you cannot even buy a pistol at
Yeah.
all in Canada. You can't buy one. Anything
Yeah.
restricted. You're allowed three shells in your shotgun. That's it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
because we don't have that, we don't have that mindset. It's always the idea that the government are there for you. They're going to help you. They're going to
Right.
protect you,
Right.
just like the police officers. So I wasn't
Right.
suggesting at all that anybody do anything. I'm just saying you
Right.
because they are organized. That's why
Yes.
with the masses of regular people, at least in
Mhm.
Canada, you know, it's the way it is where they'll lock you down if they want to. Nobody will do anything. Like our truck
It's hard.
rallies, you heard tell of. I mean, it was a picnic and music playing, and the kids were there, and it was like a family
Right.
picnic more than anything
Right.
else, right?
I'll tell you, in thinking of preparation, like post COVID, like we moved during COVID and we were like, oh, we're going to rent for a little bit and save some money and then we can buy a house. And then the market did what it did. And we were stuck for the last 4 or 5 years in rentals. And like landlords, they just kept raising the rent. We're looking at houses and there's so much competition and where I live at one point was the #1 real estate market in the United States, in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, just because it's so convenient to a lot of things. So the bidding wars were ridiculous. And I really thought about, like, survival and making our way through this. And everybody has different opinions on where to invest your money. And that's up to you and your family's needs. But like, I needed a home. I needed a home base. So we looked for 2 years and put in so many offers and lost homes. And we're in a spot now.
Yeah,
And I think it was a great investment for us for what we need with our family. We're up, in the mountains, still close enough to civilization where, we can go to work and stuff. I've got a huge lake across the street from me. I've got woods. I'm by the game lands. I have well water. Like there's so many basic needs right now. It's a huge stress relief. And if we go into a lockdown situation again, like
hmm,
I've got land, I've got the lake, I've got woods, everything. We mentally, for our mental health,
yeah,
we can be outside. That makes such a difference.
it
So
does.
there's
Yeah,
so many boxes that are checked. So and I'm speaking to your point earlier, it's like diversify, right? It's great to have Bitcoin. It's great to
yes,
have silver. It's great to
yeah,
have food.
yeah,
This is part of my prep, right? This
yeah,
diversification, but my prep is really just how I live my life. And now I just
yeah.
feel that much more confident. If God forbid something like that happens again,
Now, do you? You're
I'm
in
ready.
Ohio. You're in Ohio, right? Is that where you are?
I'm
Ohio.
in Pennsylvania.
Oh,
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay, because now
Yeah.
Ohio, that was one. That's one of the open carry states, isn't it? Ohio was or is? I thought it was.
I don't know. I'm not sure if it's
Yeah,
open carry.
I think it
I
was,
think I
but
think Pennsylvania might be open carry.
yeah.
I have to look.
But
I don't
see,
know.
like if you ever been to Canada, you wouldn't believe how different it is in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's just not there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. I used to shoot trap when I was younger,
Hmm.
and today the law is like you have to have the ammunition locked up in a box in the trunk of the car. And I
Right.
remember
Yeah.
when I was a kid, I had family in Texas. I was fascinated. Like I'd go down to Texas and we'd go chasing women that like were 17, 18, 19. We had two
Right.
rifles in the back window
Mhm.
of the pickup truck. It was a
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
And
And it would
when
take those trucks to school. They
yeah,
would
yeah,
park them in the school
exactly.
parking
Yeah,
lots.
they
Yeah.
did. Right. So it's all
Hmm.
in the mindset, the mentality, right? But
Right.
it's the old theory. Like if you give everybody a gun, then everybody can protect themselves. If you don't
Hmm.
give anybody a gun, then only the badasses are going to get them
Right.
anyway. So yeah, it's
Right.
a whole other thing completely.